All right, let's get our aprons ready. I'm gonna use this metal etch just as a real light guide coat real quick before we water sand them all. Look at them, this one looks really good. I don't see too much of anything wrong with it that needs to be done. No filler really needed. Here's that patch on the inside. There's someone was asking me about that or telling me about that. This turned out good. It's actually, you know, that I didn't capture it as well as I would like to, because when you're working with this bond and adhesive, you probably know, but time is of the essence and it's kind of messy. But yeah, I did wipe a real nice strip of it on here to reinforce that repair that was made. And so we're not gonna have any issues with it getting hit or chipping or anything like that. I don't think it really gets hit with much force, if any, but you know, just in case. But you also have to make sure that you don't close up the hole. So that looks really good. That's gonna be solid. Not gonna have any issues there. All right, I'm gonna guide coat these and we'll water sand them. I'd say this is my least favorite apron initially. It's kind of, it won't even sit flat, but I knew out of the three that I bought, there was gonna be a favorite and a least favorite somewhere. It's just always that way. But the thing is, I only need one. So I just need one to come out an absolute winner. Shooter covers do the same thing. I got some other aprons brewing too for different projects. Hit these side rails while I'm at it. I'm not gonna sand any of this stuff. I don't want to get sidetracked with it, but I do need to clear out the spray room here, make room for the play field. All right, let's take this in there and we will water sand this, these three, and we'll see what has to happen after that. All right, let's water sand these aprons. Let's see, I did one where the body came up. Although I watched it, it was shaking so much. I was like, you can't body cam everything. So I'm just gonna water sand this stuff with probably, I'm gonna go 400, then 6, then 8, and somewhere in the middle I'm gonna use some Scuff and Clean or Red Scotch-Brite to get in all the little nooks and crannies. You know, you're not gonna get every single little edge. Well, you can. I don't wanna say you're not. You can, you know, you could chase every single edge, but a lot of times if you try to do that, you're gonna wind up putting a noticeable groove in the primer, and then you won't notice it until you paint it, and then you're gonna be like, ah, that looks terrible. So, so my goal isn't to eliminate every single little bit of guide coat that might be on this inset portion where the apron cards will sit, but to make sure I do get it all off the outside and the high spots. Let's see what we got here. 400 grit, it's been soaked in. Got a block that's good for water blocking. I'll use a Red Scotch-Brite to just kind of keep it pretty wet. Let's see how close we are here. Let's get in closer. Should we get in closer? Well, that might be too close. Let's go back. So far, I haven't seen anything that's a real concern to me with this apron yet. I mean, you'll see some breakthroughs. I'll dust those with metal etch, but I don't see anything that really worries me. It's a little bit of a low spot here, but I think that's more byproduct of this flexing and this oil can, and I'm a little bit worried if I were to try to fill too much of this when it gets pushed down, if it might crack or something. So, I mean, you know, the filler's got some flex to it, but it's an apron. It's not a show car, and it's not a motorcycle tank. Every time I do an apron like this, it reminds me of motorcycle tanks when I do those. It's about that size in a way, even though it's flat, and it's just that kind of same odd shape I'm trying to work with. See if we can get down in here a little bit. We'll probably tape, and see what kind of sandpaper I got here. Yeah. Probably take a small block and just kind of get in there best I can. I'll just use this little block of wood. Maybe it was like the early, I think it was in the early 90s. Maybe it was late 80s, early 90s. I was a painter's helper at a Corvette specialty shop. And we would, this is no joke, we'd take those 70s Corvettes, you know, that Mako Shark type body, I guess you would call it. And we would water block those with a paint paddle. Because there's so many curves and sharp edges, you know, a regular block or something, you're not gonna hardly touch it. So we would take them and we'd wrap sandpaper around a paint panel, and just all day long you'd be sitting there water blocking that thing. I hated that. All right, that's pretty good there. All right, so that's 400. Now we're gonna rinse it off. We're gonna hit it with 600. When we hit it with 600, we're just going to wrap that 600 around the around the Scotch-Brite, because the methods that we're going to use right now are just about getting the sand scratches from the 400 out. We've done all our straightening work, I would say, with the 400, so the 600 just start getting some of those 400 sand scratches out. And you want to wrap it around something, you know, Scotch-Brite, I like that, because if you do it by hand only, everybody's hands are shaped a little bit different, but you'll get these trenches from your fingers if you're just sitting here doing this. So this at least gives you a little bit of a buffer so that doesn't happen. And I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to do things, but I do, most things I do are kind of old school ways. That's what I was taught, and that's how I do them. I actually think the methods that I use are the most appropriate methods for restoring this stuff anyway, because you're working on older things, you're using older methods, you know, it's a little bit more appropriate, I think. But I know people print out decals and stick them to things that aren't decals, and they do a lot of different things, but it's just kind of faking it. pretty good there. Take a little bit of this scuffing clean and scuff the whole thing. And when I do this, I'm going to try to get down in these grooves, and then I'm going to water sand the whole thing with 800 grit. Rinse this off. This off. Got a piece of 800 grit here. I'm going to wrap this around this Scotch-Brite. Gotta rub it over it real quick just to kind of get the last little bit of grit out of it. All right. One apron. These aren't my favorite paper towels, but that's fine. So that's one apron done, and I'll get the other one done. The shooter cover's done the same way, and we'll take a look at everything from there, but hopefully you get a sense of what's involved in that. All right, we got our aprons prepped. I'm gonna black everything out. I have them upside down. I'm gonna black everything out with metal etch primer just to restore any corrosion protection, clean them up to where they look blacked out underneath, catch the edges, flip them over, wipe them down, really good, tack them off, dust a little metal etch primer on the top all over it again, just lightly, just to restore any corrosion protection that I've lost through the sanding process, my breakthroughs. And then we should be ready to base them and clear them. All right, we'll let that set for a couple minutes. We'll flip it over and do pretty much the same thing, but we're gonna make sure we wipe it down good and tack everything off before we do it on the top side. All right, good with that. I think what I'm gonna do real quick is I'm gonna cover my stand again and then put them on here, because your work's only going to be as clean as your stand. And this is probably pretty clean, honestly. The epoxy primer, that's a pretty good substrate. It's probably glued down there pretty good, but I just would feel better if I start out with something fresh. And it's probably just going to be tape. So it's going to be a lot of wasted tape, but it's kind of what you need to do if you want to keep it from rigid to the stand. Okay, we got the shooter cover secured to the stand. We got the stand covered in tape. I've blown everything off and wiped it down. I'm gonna blow it off and tack it off lightly. And then I'm gonna dust some metal etch primer on there. These are kicked off a little bit. I'm just gonna rub over it real lightly. This is like 800 grit. Kind of knocking a little dust off. I'm not gonna worry about the shooter covers. It's just the apron and just the top of them. I'll tack it back off. keep it as clean as I can. Feel pretty good about that. So I'm gonna get these based in black, and after I get them based in black, I'm just gonna push them to the side. And while that base is kicking off, we'll prep our play field. All right, let's base these aprons. All right, I rearranged my aprons. I've nib sanded that second coat of base, and I'm gonna tack them off and put one more coat of black base on there. I rearranged them because I was having a hard time really getting them, hitting them just quite like I wanted them. So now that I got them pretty well covered, I can rearrange them. And when I clear it, it should be easier for me to clear them in a pattern I like. It was just, I don't know, it's a little bit too, I don't know, a little too all over the place to get a good flow going. there are aprons and our play fields cleared. 2 of the 3 aprons look good, barely a speck of trash in them. This one right here is kind of oil candy looking. It's got a little more trash in it. So I'm not sure how I'll deal with it yet, because I know I want to send them. I know I want to send them not in need of any buffing or anything before I have them screen printed. So we'll figure that out later. But yeah, these are off to a really good start. Not gonna have any issues with these. They look good and straight, so I'm happy with that. And we'll figure out the next step for them later after they dry.